There was a moment in history when the fate of the entire free world rested solely on the sheer audacity and raw genius of American engineers. In the late 1940s, as Joseph Stalin consolidated his iron fist over Eastern Europe, the Soviet High Command received a top-secret intelligence report that chilled the generals in the Kremlin to their very core. Spy photos revealed an unbelievable silhouette rising into the skies over America. It was not just a new airplane. It was a colossus of biblical proportions, a flying fortress so massive that it defied the very laws of physics. Panic instantly set in across Moscow for one terrifyingly simple reason. Soviet radars could see the giant approaching from the frozen north, but the Soviet Union's fighter jets simply could not fly high enough to reach it. The United States had created a machine of absolute deterrence, capable of crossing oceans and striking the heart of the Soviet Empire straight from Texas without a single stop and without aerial refueling. This was the legendary B-36 Peacemaker, a titan of metal born from pure American intellect that paralyzed the nation's greatest adversaries and won the Cold War without ever having to fire a single shot. To truly comprehend the magnitude of this feat that shocked the planet, one must look back to the year 1941, when the shadows of World War II threatened to swallow civilization and Great Britain teetered on the brink of collapse under Hitler's bombs. Strategists in Washington faced an unprecedented geopolitical nightmare. If Europe fell completely, the United States would lose all of its forward bases and find itself isolated by the Atlantic Ocean. Back then, geographical distance was an insurmountable barrier, as no existing bomber on Earth had the range to strike the European continent and return safely. Confronted with the impossible, the U.S. Army Air Corps issued a demand that many considered pure science fiction. They demanded a revolutionary aircraft with a speed of 450 miles per hour and an intercontinental range of nearly 12,000 miles. Although the industry initially deemed these goals absurd, forcing a revision down to 10,000 miles, the American government made a move of extraordinary boldness in 1943. Right in the middle of the chaos of war, they ordered 100 units directly from Consolidated Aircraft before the very first prototype was even built, proving that when America is challenged, its industry responds with overwhelming and unstoppable force. When the B-36 finally took to the skies for its maiden flight on August 8, 1946, the world realized that strategic aviation had changed forever. It was a true physical colossus with an unbelievable wingspan of 230 feet, a historic benchmark that to this very day no other military combat aircraft in human history has ever surpassed. When fully loaded with 86,000 pounds of heavy weaponry, the Peacemaker weighed a staggering 410,000 pounds, a weight so colossal for its time that it required specialized, reinforced runways that very few places on Earth possessed. For the Soviet spies and generals trying to crack the project, every single technical detail looked like an unreachable demonstration of power. The giant's propulsion was a masterpiece of eccentricity and ingenuity. It featured 6 massive piston engines whose gigantic propellers were mounted facing backward, pushing the aircraft instead of pulling it to maximize aerodynamic efficiency in the extreme altitudes where the air is razor-thin. Years later, Air Force engineers added 4 supplemental jet engines under the wings, creating a monstrous hybrid configuration that the crews proudly christened with a legendary motto that echoed through history: 6 turning, 4 burning. The combat philosophy of the B-36 did not rely on agile speed or heavy armor, but rather on its absolute capability to dominate the stratosphere. It was engineered to fly at an altitude of over 45,000 feet, a gray zone in the sky where enemy interceptors lost all lift and fell like stones when trying to climb. To sustain this unbelievable mission profile, the plane's wings were designed with a monstrous surface area of over 4,700 square feet, and the thickest point of this structure stood at over 7 feet high. This meant that American engineering had literally created a tunnel inside the very wings of the bomber, allowing crew members to crawl through them in mid-flight, at freezing altitudes, to inspect the engines and perform complex mechanical maintenance while cruising through the heavens. Internally, the Peacemaker operated as a fully autonomous flying military base, housing a crew of up to 22 men in fully pressurized compartments equipped with rest areas and makeshift galleys to endure the most grueling journeys aviation had ever seen. It became history's very first truly intercontinental nuclear delivery system, the ultimate symbol that the United States could project its devastating power over any coordinate on the globe directly from its own homeland. As the Cold War intensified in the early 1950s, the B-36 Peacemaker became the primary line of defense for the United States, maintaining a state of constant, terrifying readiness. American crews trained for the unthinkable, launching from bases in Texas or California, flying through the blinding white expanses of Alaska and Greenland, and approaching the Soviet border directly from the North Pole. These grueling missions pushed human endurance to its absolute limits, with the massive bombers remaining airborne for up to 45 hours straight without ever touching the ground. The mental and physical toll on the men was immense, forcing the Air Force to carry relief crews on board who would swap places mid-flight just to keep the giant operational. On the ground, maintaining this mechanical monster was an Army's job. Each aircraft possessed hundreds of spark plugs, thousands of moving parts, and complex systems that had to function flawlessly in sub-zero Arctic temperatures. Yet, despite the brutal conditions, the Peacemaker delivered exactly what it was built for, standing as a lone sentinel in an era before intercontinental ballistic missiles even existed. It was the only weapon on Earth that guaranteed the United States could strike back with devastating force, ensuring that any aggressive move by the Soviet Union would result in immediate and absolute destruction. Beyond its role as a nuclear bomber, American ingenuity transformed this massive platform into the ultimate eye in the sky through the development of the B-36 Strategic Reconnaissance variant. Long before the famous U-2 spy plane or advanced satellites were even a concept on a drawing board, the United States modified the interior of the Peacemaker to house a massive, state-of-the-art photographic suite. This specialized spy variant could fly even higher than the standard bomber, reaching a staggering 56,000 feet into the stratosphere, far out of reach of any enemy weapon. From this extreme altitude, the B-36 conducted highly classified espionage missions over hostile territory, capturing ultra-high-resolution intelligence that kept Washington steps ahead of its adversaries. The sheer adaptability of the airframe allowed American scientists to use the B-36 for some of the most radical, boundary-pushing military experiments in history. In a daring bid to create an aircraft with infinite range, engineers installed an operational nuclear reactor inside a modified B-36, shielding the crew behind tons of lead and rubber just to study the viability of atomic-powered flight. They even turned the massive bomber into an airborne aircraft carrier, launching and recovering a custom-built F-84 Parasite fighter directly from the bomb bay while cruising at high altitudes, proving to the world that American innovation knew no bounds. By the late 1950s, the jet age's rapid technological evolution began to outpace the mighty Peacemaker. The arrival of advanced Soviet jet interceptors and surface-to-air missiles chipped away at its shield of extreme altitude. Simultaneously, American engineering birthed its successor, the all-jet Boeing B-52 Stratofortress, a faster, sleek, and more flexible machine. In 1959, the U.S. military retired the last B-36, closing an intense chapter in aviation history. While most were scrapped, a few were preserved for future generations to marvel at their impossible scale. The true legacy of the B-36 Peacemaker, however, lies not in battles fought, but in the peace it successfully maintained. Its profound irony is that this terrifying bomber never dropped a single bomb in conflict. Its sacred mission was not to start a war, but to project an overwhelming aura of American strength and technological supremacy, ensuring no adversary dared cross the line. It was a colossal shield for the free world during the 20th century's darkest hours, built by Americans who achieved the impossible. The Peacemaker remains a timeless monument to the raw power of American ingenuity, a giant that kept the world safe by proving that America would always dominate the skies.